Down to Biscayne.
Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome into Off the Floor. I got a waterfall behind me. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow me at Greg Sylvander. And yes, after another win, we've got Major Passons. I don't know what's going on here. He has totally flipped his luck. I guess you should be following Major Money here on the network as well and not fade his picks anymore on Prize Picks. We've got Greg, we got Major, we got me, we got another Heat victory. The Heat win tonight against the Suns. No Kevin Durant tonight, but a 121-111 win against the Phoenix Suns. They basically took Booker and Beal totally out of it. We'll get into more of that as we go forward. Booker and Beal combined to shoot 13 of 34 from the field. We're combined minus 21 between the two of them. But the big story tonight, and it's why we're going to have a little bit of difficulty picking a player of the game, although we're going to do that in a second. This might have been the best game that Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero all played together the entire year. 26, right? 26 of 40 from the field, Greg. 26 of 40, and that's with only 3 made threes, and each of them had one. They combined to make 11 of 13 free throws. Tyler didn't have a free throw attempt, but beyond the points, which I guess 66 points off the top of my head on, again, very efficient shooting, they combined for 29 rebounds and 19 assists, Greg. I don't know if you want to roll the music. Why don't we roll the segment here? But after we roll the segment, I think we may share player of the game's honors tonight.
And now it's time for the A-Aggressive Insurance Player of the Night, sponsored by our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. If you need car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, or any other type of insurance, she's the person to go to. Based in Lauderhill, she services the entire Tri-County area here in South Florida, and she will make sure to get you the best deal. She'll probably talk to you about the Heat while you're at it. Reach out to her, insurancebylynette.com. And now, the player of the game.
Who are we picking, Greg? 66 points between 3 players, including all the other numbers, but one guy stood out more than the rest?
To me, yes, and it's because he's been very much scrutinized early in this season, and rightfully so for his play. But I'm going with Bam. He was 9 of 16, so he got up field goals. He was efficient, scored 25 points in 34 minutes, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. He had a good game. This is him stacking better habits, better, more efficient play, impacting the game statistically in more ways than just scoring. He's been doing that now consistently, even amongst the streak. But this is just with the game against LA and now tonight, I think it's him just stacking good games, getting confidence back. So for me, I know that there's 3 guys we could go with. There was also Duncan Robinson who had his moments, which we'll get to. But for me, I think that we need to give Bam as much props as possible so that he sees the other side of this slump that he's been on.
Yeah, no doubt. And this is an important game because of what CB says here in the comments. Interested to see Bam against Mobley and Allen because obviously the Suns didn't put up much resistance in terms of their bigs, although Mason Plumlee was chosen over Bam by Popovich for a USA team way back when. So that's when in fact, there are people who think that Pop did that on purpose as a favor to Riley to basically, motivate Bam. Cutting him from that particular team. I can tell you Bam was not happy about that entire happenstance at the time. But Major, when we go to it, I'm with it being Bam also. But I want to mention the other two, because what I liked about the other two tonight was that everything is in the flow. And it's been infrequent that we've been able to say that the three of them all looked good and comfortable at the same time. And I know, again, it's not a great Suns defensive team, and you don't even have Durant to worry about. But Jimmy just kind of took over. You talked about this. We talked about this a little on playback tonight. Kind of took over late when they needed a little bit of a push. It was 9 of 12 from the floor. Made a big three. The lead had been cut down to 3. He came in, made a quick 3 from the corner, kind of pushed the lead back up, and Phoenix never really challenged again. And Tyler, this to me showed a lot. I mean, everybody talked about the 3-pointers, 7 3-pointers made in the third quarter against the Lakers. He didn't make his first 3 until the very end of the game tonight, but he was 7 of 8 on 2s and was reading the game really well. Maybe they can play together.
I don't know, maybe. And a lot of people are talking if Tyler Hero's start to this year is like trustworthy. Like, is this going to be consistent? Now, him hitting 7 threes in a quarter, that's not consistent, but him doing it with 2s, and then also like his stat line, like you said, it was in the flow of everything. He finished with 17 and then 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 8 of 12 overall. Like, that shows the growth. And when people ask if I trust this growth or not, it's going to be games like this to where even though he's not hitting a bunch of threes, he's still putting up points. He's still setting up the rest of the team. He's doing all those other things to where he's more of a complete basketball player. And then to your point about Jimmy Butler, I've said it all year. I don't care what he does in the first 3 quarters. As long as he's there when they need him the most, that jab step 3 in the corner, that's his best 3, it seems like, whenever he's in the corner and takes a little jab. And then just attacking the rim and knows that they're going to foul because they've done that all night to Bam and other people. Or he's just going to get an easy layup. He happened to hit both of them to get and ones. That's just very smart basketball. And it wasn't like we're holding it till the last 2 seconds on the shot clock to get it off either. It was decisive. I thought maybe Hero playing the way he did was kind of like the catalyst to where other people didn't feel like they had to hold the ball to get their shots either, because that was a very unselfish setting for all the other players.
I'm with you on all that stuff. And that is where this team starts and needs to start, is with the 3 of them looking as connected as they did tonight. And the starting lineup, as Kmart says, is the best Miami Heat starting lineup. This starting lineup is starting to produce metrics that are positive. And Barry hit on that tonight in his tweet. But the early year starting lineup, we were trying to deny the metrics. We're like, this is one of the worst starting lineups in the league, the one with Jovic and Rozier. But now there's a little bit of a sample size building that this starting lineup works, particularly when Duncan is aggressive and making his shots early. If you're going to get the top 3 guys playing well together, then what matters next is which players are complementing them best. And this is where I want to say a lot of good and a little bad as we get into this. And we'll get into the other 2 segments as we go forward. I like Haywood Highsmith with those 3. I like with those 3. I like Duncan Robinson because of what he unlocks offensively with those 3. I do not like Terry Rozier with those 3. And I don't want to go too negative tonight, but I think what we're seeing is Spoelstra is telling you he sees what the fans have been seeing, and he's telling you with minutes. Because I'm going to go through the minutes tonight, okay? And I said this many times on playback. If Drew Smith had cut his hair earlier, okay, or didn't wear an undershirt, okay, or didn't wear a big sleeve over his leg, okay, and his name wasn't Drew Smith, but he was just any other basketball player on the floor, and you didn't know about Terry Rozier's history or his history or how the 2 of them came to the Heat, and you just watched them play basketball for this team, you would say Drew Smith should be playing and Terry Rozier should not be. And it's just that simple. Like, Drew Smith was hated on by a lot of fans, okay, because he doesn't look the part. He has gotten better. There's no question he's gotten better. The shot has gotten cleaner. He's now 6 of 10 from 3 over his last 4 games. As long as he'll take a couple a game to keep defenses honest and the shot looks decent, you can play him with these other guys because he does all the other dirty work. And I think what's obvious about this team is they need at least one dirty work guy on the court.
Exactly.
To make it work. So if Haywood's not going to be in there, Drew needs to be in there. And I just don't see the place for Terry Rozier in that situation. Just as we didn't really see the place for Josh, Spo really didn't see the place for Jovic at this time. And I think he's starting to figure out, okay, who complements my best players the most? And the other thing with Drew Smith is the thing that Eric Spoelstra does better than anything else, okay? We can talk about rotations or schemes or anything. The thing he does better than anybody else is identifying. This is when they became more of a developmental organization. This was his doing, okay? The connection with Sioux Falls, with Adam Simon, with building up all these guys, is he identifies what a guy does well and tries to work around the things he doesn't do well until he can coach them up to a certain passable level. And he identified Drew Smith as a guy that he wanted, even when the front office didn't necessarily agree with it. And I think now we're seeing what Spo saw, that this is a guy I can put in and he can cover up the weaknesses of other players. Again, this doesn't make them a championship contender, but it makes them a more dynamic team, I think, to have somebody who can do the shit that Jimmy, Tyler, and Bam shouldn't necessarily have to do all the time. And I think we're seeing him kind of build this stuff in. But let me go to the minutes here, okay, Greg? Because I just think this tells the whole story. First night of a back-to-back with a very good team coming in tomorrow in Cleveland that just got 41 points from Evan Mobley. 34 minutes for Bam, 34 for Tyler. That's under their averages. 33 for Jimmy, under his average. 29 for Duncan. 28 for Haywood Highsmith. 29 for Drew Smith. 19 for Jaquez, 16 for Rozier, 14 for Love. Didn't play Jovic, Bryant, Burks, Richardson, or Keshad Johnson. What do the numbers tell you with the minutes?
It's interesting because, Brady Hawk said that he felt pregame that he thought Nico could get a shot here with Pele Larson being out. And the interesting thing here with Drew Smith is not just the minutes with Terry Rozier, which I'll talk about in a minute, but also getting more minutes than Jaime Jaquez. Like that means that Spo really was seeing things that he liked out there. And I think it hits on what you're mentioning about dirty work guys mixing in with those starters so that they can kind of focus on the heavy lifting and stuff like that. And this is a situation where Spo's not going to be scared to shelve a $20 million player because he's done it before, basically with Duncan Robinson, and he's done it with others as well. So it also, I want to be clear here, it doesn't mean Terry won't find his way back into some sort of role at some point if they need scoring and somebody gets injured or something like that. But as of right now, in this iteration of the team, as there are 21 games in now, it's clear Drew Smith is going to get the lion's share of the minutes most nights, especially when, there's situations where they need that defense and the shots aren't falling, because the thing with Terry is that he's hot and cold. So if there's nights where he comes in and he hits a few, you could see an extended stretch from him here or there. But I think you're right in that Spo clearly trusts Drew Smith more than Terry Rozier at this moment. And I don't think anyone predicted that before the season.
No, we didn't. Okay, so let's be clear on this because I'm seeing this in the comments. We had our own questions about Drew Smith. It wasn't until honestly this training camp that I sort of saw what Spo saw. I know I didn't last year. Okay, but I think he's come back better. I think we have to. And I know, Major, you covered the Skyforce for us, and we see this happen sometimes. We assume players are going to be stagnant, that they're static. And they're not. And sometimes they get better because the role is offered to them. And sometimes they just get better because they improve their skill set. Tyler Hero is the perfect example of a guy getting better. He literally has just gotten better at everything. Yes, he's accepted the role. He's been much more mature from the first press conference on. But he's also just become a better basketball player. He's making reads now consistently that he just sort of started to make last year. That's why this whole thing, I was not a fan of Drew at the beginning. You're right. Absolutely. I own it. But I did start in training camp this year. I said he should get one of the two ways. I said that consistently, okay, over guys that were maybe more popular with other people, okay? But I was not in on him at the beginning. But I see it now because, again, you know what you're going to get. And I think Spo needs that certainty from certain players, okay? Jimmy, Tyler, Bam, obviously we've talked about their connection, their synergy and all that. But for the guys around them, it's who's going to make our best players play the best. And that's why, Major, we talk about a guy like Josh Christopher. He's a scorer at that level, but they don't know what he's going to be when you put him around their best players. They know now you put Drew around these guys, he's not going to demand the ball. He's going to defend. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to be in the right spot. If you have 3 legitimate stars, as these 3 players believe they are, that should be enough to put on the court with them.
Yeah, and to your point, I try to tell people all the time when they're looking at G League numbers, a lot of times because not a lot of people can watch the games, is they're not looking for a number 1 scoring option, right? The Heat are not looking at the G League looking for a guy that's going to get them 30 a night. They're looking for a guy that can play a role. And Drew Smith always plays a role. He always does exactly what he's supposed to do. He can trust him. Me and Sean tried to tell a lot of people, even last year before he got hurt, he was actually playing his role, even if it wasn't the prettiest thing, even if it wasn't the most special thing. And it's frustrating at times because you're like, man, I wish we had a guy that did a little bit more. He's a winner. He's just flat out a winner. He plays exactly how Spo loves the game. I mean, I don't have the stats right off the top of my head, but I would be willing to bet Drew Smith has drawn more charges than the rest of the starting lineup and maybe even the whole team combined. It's crazy how like many of those little plays, those quote unquote Heat culture plays we do. So to your point on like the Josh Christopher stuff, yes, they know what Drew Smith's going to bring them, and he fits perfectly because he doesn't need the ball. He doesn't need anything. He will, if you tell him, hey, you're going to play on-ball defense, you're going to play hard-nosed defense, do that dirty work. Drew Smith's like, sure, that's perfectly fine. If that's the only thing I ever do, I don't even have to touch the ball. Now, to your point, he has gotten better and his reads are a little bit better. You could also argue he's had more minutes. And so at the first time of last year, he was working through some stuff and learning the NBA game. Now he's already kind of done that and he knows kind of the speed and how it works a little bit because last year was his first like really true time getting some minutes. So that could be it, but he has improved. But sometimes I think we just want fancy stuff. And a guy like Drew Smith is no knock to him. And I really like him as a player, but he's not fancy. And no, I think it tricks a lot of people.
Well, he's not, and he was getting better before he got hurt last year, but then it was sort of portrayed like Spo kept him around as a favor.
Yeah.
But he also came back quicker from an ACL than you typically see guys come back. I talked to him about it. He said training camp had started to feel stronger again, but they definitely expedited that. And I give him credit. And I think the fact that he got right so quickly is another thing that that Spo and the Heat like, because they've had this whole issue with availability. And here's a guy who came back from an ACL injury to put himself back in the middle of this. I want to mention, we'll get to the play of the day here in a second. I also want to mention what Highsmith is providing lately, because that's critical, Greg. And we talked about it. You have to have somebody who's at least going to make shots when these 3 demand attention. And he's done that lately. I mean, he was 2 of 4 from 3 tonight. 6 free throw attempts for Haywood. That's a lot, right? Plus 23, 2 steals, 3 rebounds. He's never going to be a big rebounder, but if he does his job, basically, if he just boxes out. Ended up with 14 points. He's shown a little bit more athletic ability lately. I don't think there's going to be – I could see Duncan coming out of the starting lineup eventually. I do think there's that possibility still. That maybe Larson gets in there at some point. I could see Drew Smith starting with Tyler at some point if you just want to have another defender in the starting lineup. But I don't think we're going to see a change at the 4 like we thought we might see. I don't think it's going to be Hawkes. I don't think it's going to be Jovic again. I think Haywood is planted there next to Bam for now, at least until they acquire somebody.
Right. No, Haywood Highsmith is going to continue to start. He's had double figures his last 3 games. He's hit 2 or more 3-pointers in his last 3 games. Those are the things that like were incremental to what you need from Haywood Highsmith, because you don't have very many plus defenders. And we've talked about that over and over. So now you've got Haywood Highsmith, you have Drew Smith out there. At least you've got 2 guys that you can rely upon there. But Haywood Highsmith is first and foremost, obviously excluding Jimmy and Bam in the conversation about the surrounding players. So he's vital to what they do. They are paying him in a way where he needs to contribute. Like, they brought him back at a number that was below what I thought a lot of people maybe thought that the market would provide, but it came in weird for Caleb, for Haywood, but he's back at a number where he still needs to provide something, and for him to start means that he's playing bigger than his contract, and the Heat need as many guys to do that because obviously they have a player on the bench in Terry Rozier who's playing way under his over $20 million deal.
But we've seen before that Spo doesn't care about contract. I mentioned this at the end on playback. Duncan was making 18, 19 million. Max was making 3, and he moved Max ahead of Duncan. I mean, right? I mean, Max was ahead of Duncan. I mean, and then Duncan started to play better in the playoffs, and then got his role back, obviously, when Max left. But he didn't care about what the money was. He has autonomy to do that. Now, I do wonder, though, if we get closer to the trade deadline, if there will be a push to get Terry more minutes to showcase him in some way.
Yeah.
But most of the league knows what Terry is at this point, right? Like if you trade for Terry at this stage, he's not a starting point guard on a contender. Okay.
Yeah.
But he can be a bench scorer.
And what can it get you?
Right. Well, I don't think they're ready to give up on Nico specifically, but Terry's a different deal when he's crossed 30. I think what's interesting too, and we'll get to the play of the day now. I think what's interesting too is that Jaquez was an old rookie, right? But he's younger than Drew. I mean, Drew's turning 27 in 2 weeks. Okay, 3 weeks, December 30th. I just looked it up. Haywood is, let's see, what is Haywood? So they're relying on guys they're more towards the late 20s now. Haywood is born 1996. So Haywood's turning 28 next week. Okay, they're both December birthdays. Actually, Haywood's turning 27 in 2 days. Okay, so you're 28 in 2 days. So you're talking about a couple of guys who are in their sort of later 20s. But this season was supposed to be about showcasing or developing Jaquez and Jovic, who are in their earlier 20s. I'll get to Major in a second, and I want to get to the play of the day. But, Greg, does it concern you at all? Is this just about winning now? Do you play the players you need to play to win, or does it concern you that Jaquez's role has not really expanded? He's had a couple games lately, and Jovic has no role at all.
I mean, when we look at it from a macro perspective, there's definitely question marks, and you have to kind of evaluate what you really have in terms of players that are developing at the rate you need, and especially if they're going to reset, stuff like that. But all that aside, Spoelstra specifically is going to do what wins him the most games right now, and he'll throw caution to the wind as it relates to developmental prospects, contracts, all of those different things, where your hierarchy in the league, any of that stuff, he'll throw to the side for the sake of winning basketball games. And frankly, they're in an Eastern Conference where you can be, a game or two above 500 and be in the 5 seed. So that's a spot where they're going to lean into the fact that they can remain competitive in the conference, even though they're kind of in a weird position where they're not killing it in terms of their record. I expect Spoelstra to go with the guys that are going to get him victories now, pile on as many as possible, regardless of stature, contract, or the fact that, some of these guys that we really hoped were going to take big leaps are kind of taking small steps instead.
Yeah, I wonder how teams will evaluate what's happened with Jovic in particular this year on this team. Because it just does not seem like there's a clear role. It doesn't. If he's not going to start, we said it. It's going to be hard to find minutes for him off the bench as long as he's playing Love, and we haven't even gotten to the Ware thing yet. So as the season progresses, they're going to try to get Khalil more opportunities. All right, let's get to the play of the day, Greg, because I'm curious to see what you guys. I think you identified one, so I'll let Major jump in here though. So let's give us the play of the day.
And now it's time for the X-Ray of the Play of the Day, brought to us by our friends over at Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. Nelson and his team will bring the X-ray equipment and the staffing to you. If you work in a hospital or a medical office, get a consultation today at c-armandstaffing.com or give them a call at 561-891-9620. Their fleet of trucks at your service. Again, it's Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services, 561-891-9620. And now, the X-Ray of the Play of the Day.
All right, Major, give us something. What do you got?
To me, the biggest play of the game was, I mentioned it earlier, the Jimmy 3. Like, they hit a 3, Phoenix did, I think, to cut the lead 2-3, and it felt like, oh no, this is going to be another time where they kind of give up a big lead and they lose a game that they should win. And then Jimmy hits that 3, they go back up 6. It was kind of smooth sailing from then, and Jimmy took over from that point in time. So I thought that was the biggest impact on the game. I do want to shout out Bam getting back-to-back dunks. I think that means a little bit of something, him being more aggressive. Crotty was talking about it the whole game of he was getting back to his typical shot diet. So I want to shout out those back-to-back dunks for Bam. But I think truly when you look at this game specifically, the biggest play of the game was Jimmy hitting that 3 to kind of get that lead back, get a little bit of cushion, and then took over from there.
Yeah, I think Bam in general, Jimmy's 3 was probably the biggest play again to get the 6 points. But there were a couple plays from Bam. The dunk numbers coming up lately. That's good because his dunk numbers were way down. We've talked a lot about the mid-range. Dunk numbers have been way down. But the other thing is that there was a step back into a mid-range shot today that I was at the Panther game today. So I was catching up on the Heat game. Right. And that's like the first thing I saw when I came back. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. That's Bam. That looks like Bam. He looked right tonight. And again, he's playing against Plumlee and a bunch, there wasn't a whole lot of resistance in terms of their front court. So we'll get a little bit more of an idea tomorrow. I can tell you, Greg, that Mobley's one of the guys he gets up for.
There's a short list of guys, and he's one of them. And I think that Cleveland coming in, it's going to be an interesting matchup because it's a measuring stick because that, they're at the top of the conference, and it's a situation where they also played tonight. So they were in Charlotte, they got a victory, 116-102. So now they come to Miami. So that, there's no advantage from a rest perspective. So I hope Jimmy is ready to roll. They're going to need Jimmy Butler at his best, but this will be a big measuring stick for how much can we really say Bam is back to himself? I think we're going to find out against Evan Mobley and the Cavs.
I'll tell you that at training camp, not this year, but the year before, when they were in at FAU, I showed Bam an article that was, I think, written by Chris Fedor, where Mobley had said he was studying Bam to learn how to guard better out on the perimeter. And I just say Bam shook his head because Mobley had been voted ahead of Bam in a lot of different categories defensively. Just shook his head and looked at me and said, well, he's a tree. And I don't think he meant that in a positive way. So I can tell you that Bam thinks, or at least at the time, thought that Mobley might be a little low. I think Bam respects these guys defensively, but guys like Jaren Jackson and Mobley, who are kind of known for their defense on the interior, and so they and Gobert, so they get these kind of inflated reputations when Bam has to do all the other stuff that these guys don't necessarily do. He has a little, bug up his bleep about that, and I feel like he'll come out with intensity against Cleveland tomorrow. Also, I'm willing to bet, before we get to the defending the house segment, I'm willing to bet that the Heat players will be asleep tonight before the Cavs players will, because I can tell you that when you're in your home city, Art Basel, all this is nothing. This is nothing, and a lot of them have other, they have people to come home to here. When you are from Cleveland and you fly in from Charlotte early in the day, you are out all night. Okay, I can just tell you from covering the Cavs for a year. This is with those Northeast and Central Division teams. They come down here on a Saturday night in Miami. They might crawl into bed about an hour before they had to get over to the arena tomorrow. So if I were Kenny Atkinson, I would hold shoot around in the morning. So I think actually the Heat will be fresher tomorrow than you're always fresher at home because you got people to answer to. On the road, you don't. Let's get to defending the house.
And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The real estate shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house?
I'm reading the comments here because we're live tonight. Let's start worrying. My guy runs the scene on all the day and nightlife in Miami. I'll make sure he takes the cabs out. I lived in Cleveland basically for a year. It's just East 4th Street. That's it. Okay, so they'll be all over. They'll be everywhere from Wynwood to the Grove to South Beach tonight. Might even find them up here near me on Las Olas. Defending the house tonight. Greg, Bam, it was the obvious ones. I'm getting more comfortable with Tyler defensively.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
He's not getting picked on nearly as much as he used to, and I think that that's big. I think that it doesn't have as much to do with him becoming all of a sudden more laterally quick or anything like that. It's just maybe positioning and just thinking the game differently, being in the right spots. The thing that I want to call out is Devin Booker, 6 of 16, Bradley Beal, 5 of 18. That's 32% that they held those two. And that's huge. You want to see because, frankly, that wasn't just like Jimmy and Haywood locking them up at all. There were possessions from a lot of other guys that chipped in there. So as far as defending the house, Tyler Hero is a player that no longer, I think, will get. I mean, there could be a couple matchups where maybe they would target him, but I don't see him getting picked on like years past. It hasn't been a thing this season. Hopefully it won't become one, but that's been a positive trend defensively for Tyler this year. He's basically improved in every aspect of the game.
Yeah, and MacMon makes a point here, so I don't want to leave Duncan out of this. Duncan strip book twice, the Duncan erasure tonight is crazy. No, Duncan was critical on both ends, actually, offensively tonight, getting off to a big start. But if you were to tell Heat fans a year ago, or when was it everybody wanted Beal, right? Before the Heat said, well, if you don't waive the no trade, we're not interested, okay, yeah. And we're not going to pay $57 million going forward and not be able to trade you. But a lot of Heat fans were upset about that at the time. If you were to tell Heat fans at that point that you were going to start a Hero-Robinson backcourt against Booker and Beal, and you are basically going to lock both of them up, and both of your starting guards were going to be more efficient than their starting guards and outscore them overall. I mean, how many Heat fans would have bought into that? Which just tells you, right? None, right? Which just tells you, like, sometimes just making a trade for the sake of making a trade is not the best idea, even when I like the trade, like I did the one for Terry Rozier, which I now deeply regret. Anyway, have a good night, everybody. Major here on a post-game show. They won.
Four straight.
They're rolling. And the other thing that's rolling here, if you're not on Prize Picks, sign up, use the code 5, and play Bam's assists over. This has been like, how many straight games is this? Like, he's over on the assists.
A lot.
It's free money. I literally handed this to you on the pregame show. I did this with Cesar and with Eversol. We just handed you the Bam assist prop. Take it in the future tomorrow. Take it, pair it with the Mahomes half a passing yard, which they're giving you, and just take your money. Okay, we're trying to make you money here as well. Prize Picks works in Florida. Yes, S. It is back in the state of Florida. In fact, Major has a regular show on there, but it works in the state of Florida again. Duncan's still here, made it. Have a good night, everybody. The Heat are over 500. Enjoy it.